If you look at the armed forces themselves, they have a stronger capacity and capability to resist, because it is their interests that are immediately challenged one way or the other. But they themselves become agents of promoting the interests of the program, provided the approach is one that make them partners as opposed to them resisting that. If you work with women's movements, you have to strengthen their capacity to play an active role. You then also have the, well, I wouldn't call it the elite, but the intelligentsia that you have to interact with in universities, who by virtue of preparing future generations through various training sessions need to understand what the security sector is all about, that we seek to. So you have that cross-section of interest groups. Of course, you can't leave out the traditional leaders. 75% of the population of Zimbabwe obtains most of its legal services.
But when you get in a space where they facilitate dialogues, workshops, the way they handle that space is in a way where you feel comfortable to even confront your fears of the security sector and question what you need to question and participate on equal terms. Because you know how the security sector is organized. There's a person who is on the hierarchy that, you know, when they're in their own space. But when you are in a ZPSP kind of a setting, everyone is equal. When I raise my hand, I'll get my opportunity to contribute. When someone wants to raise their hand I'm not judging what they are saying based on where they are coming from, but I am saying collectively, all of us, we have a responsibility to make sure that we address issues around gender, peace and security.
The Parliament of Zimbabwe is very clear in that all those political parties that will be in Parliament are included in every activity of Parliament, and as a result, ZPSP has worked within those guidelines which are prevailing in Parliament, which are very inclusive.
They are able to engage because you have Jeremy Brickhill, you have Paul Themba Nyathi, you have Freedom Nyamubaya, people with liberation, credentials. So they're able to engage the military. But with the younger generation, you need a separate set of skills. It may be more difficult to engage the younger generation. A person who is 35 years was born in 1980. So they don't identify with the liberation struggle to an extent. If you look at their governance structure, what impresses me is that we have combatants from both the former ZIPRA or ZAPU and ZANLA. I think for me that I was impressed by that. We have Freedom Nyamubaya, you have Paul Themba Nyathi, who came from different liberation backgrounds. So I found that impressive in terms of inclusiveness. I also found it impressive that for the first time you had army generals in there. Usually civil society, we don't engage the military. But for the first time, we were able to be in the same room with the director of civic military relations. Very inclusive. There was civil society, there was government, there were the law enforcement agencies, there were traditional leaders, which indicates that they're quite strong in terms of engaging the unengageable.
There are two views on Trump. There are those who think that what happened in the Chimrenga narrative is something which is transient to the history of the sub-region, to the history of Zimbabwe. No, we take a different view. We believe that we ushered in a new society, and the sacrifice of that particular generation is eternal. It's what makes the legends of any country. So we want to capture that and make it the basis of a new and permanent aspect of Zimbabwe. Because we don't have a whole generation make choices which we made in the and pay such a heavy price and then wish that the results of their work can just be shunted aside. It's not possible. So we want to mind that tradition. We want films, we want writings, we want, if the war veterans can have more time of material comfort, they will then get the leisure also to abstract on what happened in the 70s, and then begin to write and begin to make it the basis of a new understanding which can then be passed on generation after generation.
The people must have an input into the form of security service that they are to have. It's a service that is coming to me, it's like a product. So I must have an input into it, because I have the taste, I have the liking, I will have to make choices about what is good security for me, what is not good security for me. So I must be consulted, because there cannot be security sector transformation that helps or facilitate development without having to deal or engage with the grassroots, because that is what legitimizes the SST. That is what shows this is relevant for everyone, not just the state and the security sector as in hard security.
Remember the one live broadcast meeting that we did with the police, which had been requested for by the police because they wanted to put across an issue with the community. The tables turned around. People turned out to have a lot of issues with the police. So in the end, we had to abandon the meeting because they were actually feeling really overwhelmed. The role of ZPSP now is to ensure that civil society is now able to actually focus on issues of security sector transformation without being labeled as opposition.
The strength of the program is because it lies in its inclusivity. We use that word very often because it is in being excluded that you start to create grudges, and then as time goes on you start looking for a gun, and then you create a rebel army somehow. And we believe that if you are inclusive, then you can disagree, but you understand why you are disagreeing and agree to disagree.